Tarik Talk. Your host, Tarik Mendes, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tarik Talk.
Hey guys, we are here today at the Mana Contemporary, and I'm getting a chance, so lucky to get a chance to talk to Padita. Padita, how are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Padita is part of the ESCAF residency. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah? Okay, cool. Do you want to start a little bit telling us about yourself?
Okay, I'm a British artist. I did a residency of SKF about 6 years ago and was invited back, but it took a little while to come back because a little pandemic got in the way.
Okay.
But yeah, so I've been here for 2 months working really hard and got 11 paintings done, and it's been great. Yeah.
That's amazing. And what's your creative process like?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Like when you show up to the studio, are you able to get to work right away, or do you need to kind of like get a meditation or a coffee going and relax?
Well, coffee's definitely welcome.
Yes.
It's definitely welcome. But no, I usually know what I want to do of a day.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty motivated like that.
That's amazing. And do you have a preference of like time of day that you like to work? Are you like a night owl, or do you prefer the mornings?
Well, I've got 2 kids, so they've turned me into a morning person where I wasn't before. I've had no choice. So, yeah, I find it quite good to get in quite early.
Oh, wow, 2 kids. You seem so... I thought, like, we were the same age. You seem so young. That's amazing.
Bless you.
And do you think having... Because this is what I find very fascinating. Artists that don't have children, this is like, when I ask them, what do you see yourself for the future? Mm-hmm. This is like their main goal. It's like to have my kids... have them hopefully around me painting while I'm painting. Do you think having children as an artist has like impacted your work or inspired you in a way?
Well, both, yes.
Yeah. And
I think it can be a lot tougher on women than men, and I think history kind of bears that out, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, of course it sort of curtails a lot of what you can do and takes time and all the rest of it, but having my kids has also been a massive inspiration, and it's sort of, you have to sort your shit out. Do you know what I mean? You have to kind of get your priorities right and figure out what you want to do in life, what you want out of it. So I mean, if anything, it's made me more ambitious.
Mm-hmm. And do you find it like hard balancing like having kids and being an artist, like, or does that give you like kind of like an endless inspiration because you're kind of able to see the world through their perspective? When I was younger, and when they were younger. You're still young. Hello.
Oh, bless you. No, when they were little and I wasn't getting much sleep, then yeah, that was really, really, really tough.
Yeah.
Not so much now. In quite a good sort of routine with it. I get a lot of studio time. I get to go out and about in London a lot.
Wow.
But I mean, I wanted to do this residency obviously because New York is the biggest art mecca in the world. It's amazing. But also just to have a really fixed, concentrated time on my work. And so it's been really good doing that.
Well, that's amazing. And are you an artist that when you're working, do you enjoy having people around you? Like before this residency, did you like the output or having people around you, or did you find yourself getting distracted?
I'm quite good at knuckling down when I need to, so sort of drowning stuff out. No, I love interacting with other artists. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's so interesting, like endlessly meeting other artists and chatting about what they do. But yeah, I mean, being an artist, you are kind of on your own a lot with your head, and I'm fine with that. I can put my headphones on.
And you mentioned 11 paintings. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about them? Is it like a series?
Yeah, so it's sort of following on a bit from work I was doing in the UK, where they're sort of strange, objecty things floating in the sea. I mean, you could say surreal seascapes. I don't know, but a lot of them are sort of look like they're made of sort of ice cream and tiles from Subway or London Underground, or they're sort of about a lot of things. They're about sort of shifting forms and shifting time and challenging states of matter, sort of quantum physicsy stuff.
That's cool. And how does like ideas come to you? Do you have to be in motion? Do you have to be still? Like, where do you get your ideas from?
Ooh.
Or is it like spontaneous for you?
Well, I have to keep my sketchbook near me because you don't know, really.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I mean, you can't force ideas
or
whatever. You just have to keep sketching in your sketchbook, keep writing things down, and sort of see what floats to the surface.
Yeah.
And if it comes up, then, you know, that's a sign that it needs to be made.
Oh, wow. That's very disciplined. So you always keep a sketchbook with you? Like, if you have an idea, you just jot it down?
Yeah. I mean, I find that if I don't have the sketchbook near, it's kind of hard to get to sleep. Because then I will start thinking of ideas and I will start bubbling over.
Yeah.
But if my sketchbook's there, I can just quickly scribble something down and then it's off my brain.
Oh, wow.
So
that's very cool, because a lot of people, like, for example, I just let my ideas incubate and it drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But I love when I get to talk to artists that they're so, like, disciplined in their craft, that they have the sketchbook, they're able to, like, jot it down right away. So congrats on that. That's really cool.
Well, it's quite a good one, because otherwise it would drive me crazy too. So it's good to have it. I know it's written down. I know it's drawn. So, I can reference.
And I get a lot of these questions from young artists that they tell me to ask future guests. In terms of young artists that they feel in their soul they're an artist, they want to pursue that, but they're not sure what to do. What's an advice that you would give a young artist, like, who knows they're an artist but they don't know exactly where to go or what to believe in?
I think there's kind of two parts to that question. There's sort of what the artist will produce, and I think you can't force that, and you shouldn't force it. You should just kind of live your life and see if it comes to you. Yeah. And if you want to do something, if you want to produce a certain type of work, then just work really, really hard at it and be prepared for a lot of it not to work out. Yeah. So I think there's that side of it. Because you have to kind of ask why you want to be an artist as well. I think that's a good question to ask yourself. Absolutely. But I suppose the second part to that question is, especially as young artists, knowing about the way the art world works and sort of navigating it and finding the bits of it that are good for you can be really tricky. And I mean, there's no simple answer to that, really. Yeah. I think just be interested and sort of go to as many galleries and shows as you can.
Well, that's amazing advice. And my favorite question that I like to ask the guests is, what's an advice, like artistic business advice, that you would tell your younger self? I don't know if I'd take my own advice, but I'd tell myself to not worry so much about what other people think and just properly trust my instincts and go with it. Well, that's beautiful. And when you're done with the artwork, do you enjoy hearing like the critiques of the artwork, or do you prefer just to see people from afar enjoying your artwork?
I think it's important to get critique on your artwork for many reasons. It needs to be at the right time and at the right point. Yeah. Because sometimes if you're still kind of thinking about an idea or still in the middle of a work and someone criticizes it, it can really kind of sway where you go. But when you finish something, I mean, always, whether you buy into what people are saying or not, it's a gift. People giving you that critique is a gift, and you don't have to have it. You don't have to own it.
And you mentioned galleries and going to galleries in New York City. Is that something that you use for your like creative process? Like, look, like when you're going to galleries or seeing art, are you kind of like just using that moment to relax, or are you using that moment to get inspired and get creative ideas?
I suppose it depends what's in the gallery, really. So both of those things, and also because I like to know what's going on, and I like to have a feel for different spaces and learn about new artists, but you don't know if you're going to go to a show and it's going to be a bit meditative and sort of serene, or I went to the Whitney, what was the artist called? Josh someone. Sorry, my...
No worries, no worries.
I remember. But anyway, it was amazing.
Is it a current show at the Whitney?
Yeah. He does like there's some AI stuff, there's some 3D printing, there's...
I can't remember the name.
I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was like massively full on and of the time. It was so now. Mm-hmm. It was so kind of dystopian, utopian future in your face. And it was amazing, but it was very overwhelming. So yeah, I like the surprise of it as well. You don't know, and if you see something on Instagram, it could look so different in life. Nothing can replace that, really.
Yeah. And do you ever like create an artwork that you're not sure about, you don't really understand it, but you go with it, but then later on you kind of look back and you're like, oh my gosh, I was like going through something and it reflected on that, but now I understand it and it makes much more sense to me now than it did back then when I finished it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a quote, and I forget who said it, but someone said you can't live your life and understand it at the same time. Oh, and I scrawled it on my studio wall at home because I just thought, actually. Yeah, that's it, because sometimes it doesn't make sense, and it's a weird feeling because you're kind of, I don't know if it's just subconscious, but you're sort of ahead of yourself in some way. And
no, I get what you mean. And who are your influences? Like, who are you inspired by?
Oh, that's a big question. Who am I really digging right now? Fiona Banner, I'm checking out a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I really love Katie Patterson. You stumped me. There's too many.
No
too
worries.
many.
Just at the moment.
I've seen so much amazing art here as well. I mean, I've just...
Yeah.
My head's so full at the moment. I need to decompress.
Yes.
But, yeah.
And how do you do, like... One thing that I like learning about from other people is like your artistic self-care routine. Like, how are you able to like kind of unplug, and not have your mind constantly think all the time?
I don't know.
It just happens?
Well, not necessarily, but I know at the moment I've been working so hard that I need to unplug when I go home. And so I've got another artist using my studio at home, so I can't get in there for a week.
Oh wow.
Which I think's probably a really good thing.
Yeah, but that's kind of cool, like to go back and see like how they kind of use the space in a way that you never thought of. Yeah, because it happened to me once.
No, it is cool, and she's a friend of mine, and
oh, that's amazing.
And then I'll get my lovely studio back. I've missed it.
Yes.
But I think it's good to have that week just to get my bearings, get over my jet lag, decompress, and just
be still in a way, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, so do you want to share with us any future projects you have coming up?
Yeah, sure. So currently I've got painting in the summer show at the Royal Academy back in the UK.
Oh wow, congrats.
Thank you. And I'm waiting on the John Moores Painting Prize, which is a big thing in the UK, but I've learned it's not here. So I've been telling people and they've been looking blank, but never mind. And I've got a show coming up, a group show in London, September, okay. And then quite a lot of other stuff brewing.
That's amazing.
And I'd love to come back here and exhibit because it's awesome over here.
Congrats. Do you mind sharing your Instagram and your website just so we can like follow you and then keep up with all your cool stuff?
So my Instagram is at Perdita Sinclair. That's PERDITASINCLAIR. Sorry, I always have to spell my name.
Yes,
no
please
one
do.
knows otherwise.
It's always best.
And my website's just perditasinclair.com.
Perfect. Easy breezy.
Yeah.
And are you open to commissions? Like if somebody hears this podcast and sees your work and they reach out to you through your Instagram or website?
I'm really happy for anyone to reach out to me, but because of the kind of work I do, it's not really commissionable, if that's good grammar or not. But they're welcome. Reach out, ask whatever you like, but it's not really commission work.
Perfect. Okay, no worries. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank
it's been a
you.
pleasure. I'm so honored to have you here and getting to learn about you and your process. Thank you so much,
Okay,
Benita.
cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Tarik Talk. Follow Tarik Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online. This is Tarik Talk. Your host, Tarik Mendes, takes you on a journey with guests from all around the world. Broadcasting around the world. Around the world. This is Tarik Talk.
All right, guys, we are here today with Leonard Gabriel at Mana Contemporary. He's an artist from the, if I'm saying this correctly, the SCAF?
SCAF program,
SCAF program,
Yeah.
perfect.
Actually, it's an SCAF Foundation.
SCAF Foundation,
yes.
Perfect. Thank you so much for letting me come here and share your story and your wisdom. I'm so excited we got to meet today.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you. So we're going to start, do you want to start with telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I'm a figurative artist. I have had a long career in the arts. I sold creative services to advertising agencies for about 20 years. Before that, I was a company photographer. My life has really been mainly photography. And then there was disruptive change that happened when the computer came in, and I did a number of different jobs. Somebody said to be a good art teacher, and I taught art in Springfield, New Jersey for the last 20 years. At the end, I taught AP Art History, AP Studio, ceramics, 3D design, 3D printing, Photoshop. And I retired in June 21.
Oh, wow.
So since then, I have been really concentrating on making art and traveling, looking at great art to inform my work, and also making art almost every day.
Oh, wow. And do you think being retired now has impacted your work?
I think, as an artist, even when I was working, I was always making art, I did a lot of life drawing, because the life drawing was, you could go and you can really knock out some art and get to really move in it. But I think the commitment was always there. I always had a strong work ethic. I enjoy working. I enjoy being in the studio. So now I have a real opportunity to do that on a full-time basis. And I put a lot of hours in because it provides energy for me. It's a source of renewal.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And you previously mentioned, when we were having a conversation off camera, that you travel a lot. Do you think that inspires a lot of your work? How does that?
Absolutely. I've been fortunate to, as soon as I retired, to travel. I was in Europe for 3 months. I went to the Venice Biennale and saw, it's really great. I was there for 2 weeks in Venice. I also traveled to Rome and saw the Vatican Museum. I took a one-day train ride to Florence. I saw the David, which was truly inspiring. It was just really impactful. Botticelli's Birth of Venus, Primavera, these things were just, and I taught art history, so I really wanted to see these things. In addition to that, I also went to Miami and saw Art Basel, and so I've seen a lot of art, and I think it really has an impact. It's interesting. My son went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He had a teacher, a professor, and she had this idea of the museum of your mind, that everything you see gets put back in a museum in your mind, and when you make art, you reference it, whether you know it or not. And I have, after this last year and a half of seeing great art and being involved with great art, I think it's really impacted my work. I can see things that I've recognized, or it feels right. It's just the scene. And then being here in SCAF is unbelievable, because I can literally walk to the museums. I go on a PATH train. I walk to all the galleries in Tribeca. I went and saw Cicely Brown speak at the Met. It's just an incredible experience. So
yes, that was an amazing show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also wanted to ask, you shared that you have a son. This is a question that I love asking the people I interview because I don't have any kids, but when I'm around kids, I always feel like my imagination gets more freely because, they don't have any restrictions or rules.
Yes.
Previous guest asked this question too. Do you think having do you have more than one child?
I have one son.
One son? Has having a child impacted your work, your creative process to be?
So yes, having a child does impact. That's a special one-on-one. You see how they just put things. I would have different toys where he would put together things, and it was just interesting to see how they did that. But also, I taught grades 3 through 5 for 5 years, and then I taught middle school for 10 years, and that was probably, I would have to say, I was teacher of the year. I was considered the creative guru of the district. They had a really strong program, amazing. And then I taught high school, and so I think seeing how these minds create at different stages of their development has really, really impacted my work. And it's also impacted the possibilities, Teaching, especially when they're making art, there's different thinking at all different ages as they develop. And I think my particular way of teaching was really about personal voice. I didn't focus too much on academics. It was really the expression of personal voice, and it was really exciting to see, someone that was an adolescent be able to express something, or someone who was a child be able to see these things. And I think seeing these, and then of course, as an artist, I would see lines that were really extraordinary or impactful, creative, and I think that made me look and see in a different way. It was really, it was a really great experience.
And going back to your travels and your art knowledge and everything that you know, how is it for you, when you go to a museum, do you always find, because you probably know so much of art, are you able to enjoy the art, or you just art, always thinking, every detail, I wonder how, what period this is from, how they did this, or can you just, relax from, a, consumer type of view?
Well, that's interesting. I have a mind that goes a million miles an hour, so first of all, just being in these and seeing this great art is it's an amazing experience. Mm-hmm. I'm in awe. But since I taught art history, I do a visual analysis. How was it made? What did it do? How are the brush strokes? What do I see? What does it look like? How is the color put down? You can always tell an artist at an art museum. They're the ones that are really close, looking deeply, So I just find, especially since I've taught art history, especially since then, before art history, I thought I really knew art history, but I really didn't. I thought all the art before the Impressionists was all the same style, and I realized it was just so much deeper. So that has really been. And sometimes you see things that artists have done in the past, and you say, that kind of gives me permission to do these sort of things. Or I make a mark like that, or similar to it, or that's interesting how they do this. And it really, you really take it back to the studio. And I don't think you say, I'm going to paint like this, but when you're doing that, you see the mark. I mean, I had this one art professor, that said, you make a mark, and your eye sees it, and then you change it in your brain, and it goes down your arm, and you make a mark, and it's just in a creative loop. And I just find it to be really interesting, really fascinating.
Did you ever have one of those artistic moments where you're going through something in life, or you're inspired by something, and you create a piece of art, but you're not sure where that came from, and then maybe weeks later or days later, you're like, oh my gosh, this was, was influenced by this, or I was going through this, so it reflected a little bit on the canvas. Do you have any of those moments?
I think, David Hockney was asked, famous British artist, he's 82, and when he has work, he has a tremendous amount, and they ask him, how does he do that? He says, well, first of all, I'm 82, I don't go anywhere, I'm in the studio. But second of all, he says, when I make art, it gives me energy. I feel like I'm 30. It's not only when I stop, it's that I feel old. And I find that when I'm in the studio, there is this experience that I have that is just transcending, And I kid one of the artists I was talking about, I'm going to have a spiritual experience here looking at the art, and it really is. It really has that impact. So, yeah, it is. I think sometimes when you're making art, everything works. It flows. You're in the flow. Mahaley Csikszentmihalyi wrote about that. You're in the flow where everything looks heightened, the colors are heightened. and it doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's an incredible experience. So yeah, I think this whole process is really stimulating.
Yeah. And going back to your creative process, are you an artist that like to create in the morning, afternoon, or night? Like, do you have a preference, or it's just more spontaneous for you?
I'm really not an early riser, and I do work. Have a tendency to work late at night. I'll start and I just keep on working, and sometimes I have to realize, it's like 2:00 in the morning. I got to get to bed. But when I'm working late, it just I just have everything passes, the time span passes. So I try to get up a little bit earlier to try to do that, especially if I'm in a studio that doesn't really have good light. But I spend a lot of time in the studio. I really like being in there. So.
And what's your process like? Because when you first get into the studio, do you have kind of like a routine where you have to sit down, look at stuff like imagery, coffee, or do you just get right to work?
I pretty much, I have had situations where I just before I go to bed, I said I'm going to go down and take a look at something. It needs a little bit here. And next thing you know, I'm painting for a couple of hours. The process. When I come to the studio, I'm pretty much ready to work. What's really great about SCAF being at Mana is that I'm walking towards here. When I'm here, I'm ready to work. But I think what's really different about what I do is that half of my life I've been a photographer. I started out as a corporate photographer, and I came to New York and I worked in the advertising industry that dealt with the photographic image. And during that time, I always took photography, street photography. I had a lot of photographs. And what happens is a lot of my work is based on photography. And then from there, I'll make drawings. And drawing for me has really been tremendous. I'll make full-size contour drawings and of the paint. If I do a 30 by 40 painting, I'll do a 30 by 40 drawing. And with charcoal. And there's something about the feedback of the charcoal on the paper, and there's just a lot of movement and freedom. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll make a collage. And then some of the images I use are from music videos that I'll take a collage, make a picture of it, and I'll cut it up and make a collage. You do a color study. So there's a lot of processes, the photograph, the drawing, the collage, sometimes even printmaking, in the process of getting to the photograph, And so, it just kind of fell into that. It wasn't something that I really just like, well, I'm going to draw. I don't have a studio now, so now I'm going to draw. Or I don't have a studio, so I have a 9x12 heavy duty watercolor pad, and I'm using gouache. I can use up my ideas there. And it just sort of developed into that sort of process. One thing that's really interesting is that I use this kind of long, narrow format. And I was wondering why I was doing that. And then at some point I was checking ratios, and it turns out that this format I'm using is exactly the same format of a 35 millimeter camera. So It just turned out that that's the size that I felt comfortable with. And now I'm doing paintings that are 32 inches by 48. They're big, but it's the same format, and it just fits into that. So that's really interesting that I've been shooting photography for years with like 35 millimeter, and then now digital in that same format.
That's so fascinating.
So yeah, it's really interesting.
And do you ever go back, since you did photography, do you ever go back to photographs you've taken and then try to repaint them?
Well, I do have a lot of photographs. I don't really retake them. What I do is I do a couple things. I do photo compositions, photo comps, where I take them apart and reassemble them in Photoshop. But I do like the handwork. So sometimes I'll print out laser prints and cut them up with scissors and rearrange them. There's something about that physical interaction that really, I'll add color to it, So I am constantly looking at images. And as a matter of fact, I'm not a lot of fun to look at a movie, because then I'll stop the movie and say, look at what they're doing here. And this is see how the background's out of focus. Yeah. And I have people say, I don't care. I just want to watch the movie, So I'm constantly looking at videos, looking at movies. I'm looking at videos of artists, looking at music videos, stopping to see how they do it, and then I look at images all the time. That's pretty much what I do.
And where does inspiration come for you? Do you have to travel? Do you have to be in motion, or?
I think I'm a figurative artist, so one of the things I'm doing, the main focus of what I'm doing, is emotion expressed through the body language of the person, And I think when I sold creative services, I was a creative consultant, but I sold creative services. I was a really very good salesman, and I could tell by the body language and the questions they were asking whether or not they were interested or not, because it's all about what the client wants. So whether am I satisfying what they want? And so you can actually see that, and I have a feel for it. There's a feeling that I get, and so when I look at photographs, I can see almost what the person's feeling or could possibly feeling. So that's where I think, and then I feel right away, I want to draw that. I want to draw what that looks like. And so I would say, and I'm constantly looking at images, and I'm constantly inspired by the images that I see. I think about them, think about what a person, how a person would walk, what are they feeling, and I'm not saying that I know what they're feeling, but there is something that I can perceive. So that's really where my inspiration comes from.
And how does that work for you? Do you keep it like all in your head, or do you have like a sketchbook or your notes?
I do. I do a lot. I look at a lot of images. I do a lot of drawing, and I seem to be thinking all the time. People say you got those wheels running, So, and I'm working through like a whole series of competitive swimmers. Not really when they're swimming, but at the moment when they're on the starting block. That moment before, what is it in their language? I have one painting where I think somebody's called out to the person. They look to their right and they're really annoyed because they're so worked up. When people are dancing, there's a certain like a movement, or even when they're sitting down looking at you, there's a certain thing about it. So when I see an image, I was looking through a newspaper in Germany, and there was this photograph, a 1931 photograph by August Sander of the secretary, and she looked so contemporary. She was very cool. She had a short haircut, and she looked in the camera. She had this really, you could see a sense of confidence, self-knowing, and I just felt like, wow, that was just, and she felt very contemporary, almost 90 years old, this photograph.
Wow.
So I just see things, and right away, you
absorb it.
Yeah. So that leads to another and leads to another.
And who are you influenced by? Like who is like your top artist?
Well, I think right now one of the artists one of the contemporary artists I think is really exciting for me is Jennifer Packer. She's 40 years old. Last year she had a one-person show at the Whitney, and also a show at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, MoCA. And she's doing figurative in a way I haven't seen before. It's most of the figurative I see, the best way to describe is that it's expressive. It may not be anatomically correct. There's something about the color form that expresses and she's doing expressive portraiture in a way that I've never seen before. She has drawings. She draws a lot, and I like this idea of combining painting with drawing, which is really tough to do because it's hard. It's either a drawing or a painting. But she'll have drawings in the painting where she has the hand of a person that's down, and then she decides to have it across his waist, and she keeps the first drawing in there. So I just think that, and then all the Renaissance, Raphael, Botticelli, and Michelangelo, and then I could just go on and on. My head is full of this art history, Goya, all this, and even Gerhard Richter, even the new one. So, and I last weekend I was in Tribeca. I went to all those galleries. There was some really amazing there also. So it's chock full. There's a lot. They're all fighting for space in my head.
I like that. And one thing I like about your work, one of my favorite artworks you have, it's like two gentlemen, one sitting.
I call that brothers. Yeah,
brothers. I really like that one. First, I love the use of colors that you do. It's kind of like in the same family, but it's so expressive.
Yes, right.
But those two paintings really like touched me. I don't know how to explain it, but I really like connected with it. And I said, "Oh my God, I can't wait to interview you."
Yes.
Because I try not to like read too much into the person that I interview, because I kind of want to learn with the listeners. So everything you said, like I'm kind of putting like two and two, because I always look at the work and I'm like, oh, I kind of see this, like the figurative. Yeah, I get that. Where do you see yourself in your next step? Like what are you working on at the moment that you kind of envision for the future?
One of the goals of artist residency is to experiment, and I've been trying different things. And I think when I was in, I mentioned before the interview, I went to San Miguel de Allende It's an artist town north of Mexico City, and I rented a casita with a 12 by 15 foot studio to prep for this, and I painted for 3 months. And I believe at the end I had a breakthrough, you know. And then coming here was really good because I more or less hit the ground running. You know, I kind of figured out what I was doing. It took me about a week to get into the gear here, whereas in San Miguel it took me the first month I was just experimenting before I figured it out. But so I've had a number of different styles, a number of different breakthroughs. I'm going to go back to Europe right after this and paint for 3 months and explore some of the ones that I've done. I'm talking right now to a curator in Mexico City who's interested in doing a one-person show in beginning of next year. And he also has connections with a gallery in Oaxaca, so it's possible that could happen. But so the next thing is I'm going to continue working what I've been doing now, and then from there I'll probably go see some shows. I'll probably see Art Basel in Miami. You know, that was a really great thing. Yeah. And I'll go back to San Miguel and paint.
And I have a question. Since you mentioned like all the work that you have been creating throughout your life, do you happen do you have a big archive of your paintings?
I have some artwork that I've kept. Mm-hmm. Other ones after I've looked at them for a few years, I said, maybe that isn't so good. It's really moved on. I have an artist friend. There was one painting I really liked, and then at the end, I don't like it as much. And my artist friend says, as you get better, the paintings you liked before, they don't work for you. What happened was when I was teaching art, especially when I got into middle and high school, I didn't have a lot of time, So I used to do a lot of life drawing. And they have these life drawing studios where there's a model, no instructor, and you pay $25. And I really like that because in 2 or 3 hours, and it's very expressive. Charcoal, pastel, boom, And so I do have a large collection. And then that night, and you experiment, that night I come back with some really nice things that are on newsprint. They're not final art, but they're very expressive. They're very special in their own right. So I do have a lot of the life drawing. And I think that's why I'm able to paint figuratively, because of all the life drawing I've been doing I started in earnest about 7 years ago, and I've been doing it for 6 or 7 years now, to the point where, and now when I draw something, there's just something, it just kind of hits me. Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, that's the way it looks like. It just so that's my collection.
And when you go back to normal life, are you able to, since you mentioned it like figurative, like when you're having fun or with your son, are you able to kind of like relax, or as you mentioned before, is your mind always working, like picking up certain things and observation?
I've had people say, you're passionate. And I don't think I'm really passionate, but I get up in the morning and I want to be in the studio. Mm-hmm. I guess you call that driven. So I really feel, do the work. And I hear that message over and over and over again. Do the work. Famous athletes have said, the reason I'm good is I practice every day. And the reason people practice every day is because they're driven. They're not doing it because they have to. They do it because they want to. And so my son is he both his parents were art teachers, and he had art all the time. So we talk about art often, and we have these long conversations about art and what's going on in his life, and he's coming actually for the show. He'll be here tomorrow. And so, it's nice, I do have some friends who are, I call them and talk to them, because everyone is retired and they're everywhere, So, I don't know, since I've started this in January in San Miguel, and been working here, it's been pretty much, I've been thinking about art pretty much most of the time. And when I go home, I'll follow people who are YouTubers that visited this. Mary Lynn Buchanan she's excellent. She travels all over and sees all these galleries, or also look at videos about artists,
So basically, you're like an endless 24-hour creative.
Yeah, I enjoy it. People say you're going to burn out. I don't burn out. That's the way I work. I've always worked that way.
Have you burned out before artistically?
No, not really. No, I just my brother, who's a very successful businessman, said, you're project driven, not schedule driven. Yeah. You start a job and you just keep working on it till you get done. And the one thing is, I think I learned that when I was working in advertising. my specialty was delivering work on a rush basis, on time, and often I would work all night long, and doing these things, and that's how everybody in advertising worked, and I just became part of who I am, and you work until the work's done, and then you put your feet up, So.
And do you think that has like shaped the artist you are today, like with giving you like discipline and ambitious and? Absolutely,
I mean. This may sound a little kind of, I don't know, like I'm trying to pat myself on the back, but I enjoy working, I enjoy getting and working on a job, and it really gives me purpose, and I get involved in it, There was a time when all the businesses in New York City went out to business, everyone was out of work, and I found myself selling suits in Nordstrom. And I really felt like it was really below me, or maybe I had more talent than that, but I had a mortgage and I had a kid. So I said, I got to make this work, because I'm going to hate doing it. So I got into it. I got into the fabric. I got into, the styling of the coats. I got into connecting with customers, and I was able to be, as an artist, pick the different colors of fabrics and put everything together. So I just think it's just a motivation.
So as you mentioned with the fabrics, do you think that kind of like inspire you to do the collages that you do now?
I that's really interesting. What is it about collage? What really did that was, in advertising, we would have clients that would, for instance, there's this one company, a design company, that was doing the posters for Annie, the musical Annie. So they had this photo shoots, and they would send us transparencies, and we'd make prints of these, and then we'd send them back, and then they would cut them and put them together and send back a collage piece that was for concept. These are concept pieces. They would present this to the client. So they had Annie, and then they had Annie with an old dress, and then it came back with the same Annie, and they pasted up with a new dress, and they had Daddy Warbucks' hand, but it wasn't big enough, so they sent back another one with a bigger hand, and this whole thing of just. And then when I was working with art directors and advertising agencies, they would use tear sheets, take magazines and tear out the tear sheets, and we would copy them, and they would blow them up to make a what they call a comp, a dummy of what the ad could be. And so when they blew it up, you could see the dot pattern in it, and it was just really. And then they would go back and forth and back and forth. It's really exciting to see that. And sometimes they would cut like a zigzag pattern, and so that you couldn't see where the line was. I mean, you could see the line, but because of the zigzag. So I think all that really got me excited about, and I started putting my collages together that way. It was really, and it's fast and intuitive, and if it doesn't work, it's a collage. You just do another one or cover it over. So
that's so interesting. I love how like the trajectory of your life, like little pieces you picked up along the way to be exactly where you are, and how like all of them kind of impacted your work today. I guess you could say that, right?
Yeah, and what's really interesting, some of the work that I'm doing now is very expressive in mark making, and there's a certain, in advertising, there's a deadline. You're working on a deadline to knock these things done as fast as you can, but it's still time to be good. And sometimes when I'm working on art, there is this sense of urgency or a sense of energy that's put into the artwork that I can really feel, and it's just, I feel it. I feel it in the brush, I feel it in my hand, I feel it in moving it. So it's all those things that I think.
Do you think of a deadline while you're creating? Like, do you still have that in your mind?
No, it's just I'm just working on the art.
Just working.
I'm working on the art to make it, see if it comes out. And the great thing about being in a residency is that you can try things out. Sometimes it doesn't work out. You know? But no, I don't think that this has got to be done at a certain time. I do think I want to make this work. I'm just working on the project. And I'm trying different things. So it's not like I'm rushing, but there's an energy in doing it. So.
Are you able, when you're working in the studio, are you able, because I'm not, like, if somebody talks to me while I'm creating, I totally get distracted, and then I have to kind of take a whole hour to get back in the zone. Are you able to go right back, or?
I'm pretty much really
flexible?
Involved, sometimes I don't even hear anything,
Wow.
And I had a friend we were making art in this same space, and later on, she did a video. And I saw it. I said, "When'd you do this?"
Yeah.
She goes, "When I was with you. You didn't even know. You didn't even know." I said, "But you set up a camera and everything. When did you do that? So I don't. I
You're
don't.
Just in the zone.
Yeah. I don't. And something. It's not that I don't hear. It's just that I'm in. It doesn't. Once I'm working, it's really hard to
to snap out
to
and
get
away.
out. I just work until I'm done.
And I have a question because a lot of young artists send questions after they listen to each episode, and one of the questions that I get the most is young artists that want to be artists, but they don't know how to, get the ball going in a way. What advice would you give to like a young artist that knows, they want to go into the arts, but they don't really know their next step? Like they're kind of afraid or whatever the circumstance may be.
Well, one thing Picasso said: "There's no inspiration. Inspiration is in work." If you don't know what you're going to do when you start working, it's still gonna, it'll come out. Just keep on working. It's just Jerry Saltz. I listened to his book, How to Be an Artist, which is really I'm listening. I don't have time to read it, but I listened to it. And he's got a lot of good advice, and one of them is go to the studio and do the work. Also, I find that taking courses when I taught. And I taught for 20 years. I took a course every fall and spring,
Oh, wow.
And so I would take at the Visual Arts Center in Summit. I would take courses, Sometimes I would go to Kane and take watercolor courses or drawing courses. Every spring I would take ceramic courses. Every spring and fall I took a course, And so that helps because you're with professors, you get kind of a feedback. And then I got to the point where later in my career, I was doing the life drawing. And I didn't need, and then, at first I'd had an instructor, and then I went to these open studios that didn't have an instructor, and I said, I can do this. I don't need to have an instructor, So I think it's because, for the 20, 30, 40 years I've been doing these courses. So I think number one is do the work. Don't wait for inspiration. Inspiration comes from working. And number two is, take courses, and realize sometimes it doesn't work, I listened to this podcast. This fellow studies how artists work, and he talks about their day. And so one of the ones I was really interested in was Maya Angelou, the great poet.
Oh, I love her.
So what she does, she rents an apartment. She goes, well, she's passed away, but she went there every morning at 9 o'clock, and she would work. So if she had a bad day, she would leave at 2. She had a good day, she stayed at 5.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was really interesting because for me, it was the other way around. If I have a bad day, I just keep on working, to where I work it through. And it doesn't really work,
Yeah.
So then if she has a bad day, then she goes home and says, today was a bad day. Today's a bad day. Put it to bed. We get up tomorrow and do it again. So and all the artists go through this. I was telling one of my friends about that. I just painted today and it was terrible. She says, "That's a bad painting."
Yeah.
You have to do a lot of bad paintings to get to good paintings. So that's another. And there are so many videos, YouTube. There's a fellow that's an oil painter that I listen to also. There are so many out there that had advice for artists. One of them was you're going to make a lot of bad paintings. But to get a good painting, all those bad paintings are in that good painting. So.
And do you ever go back and repaint your paintings, or you kind of just toss them?
I haven't. I do have this swimming series that I've been doing for over a year.
Oh, wow.
And my son said, it's getting kind of old. And I said, but every time I do it, it's different.
It's a different.
It comes out differently. And so I do that. I have this dancer series, these ska dancers that I do, and I look at these historical photographs. So. Yeah, and I think one of the things I learned here, one of it was the art critic Paul Laster actually had to give me advice and say, you have a lot of work, but I don't see anything that connects it. And I said, well, it's all this human experience. He says, oh yeah, that I have, but I'd like to see, and I have a photograph by August Sander who took this photograph of the secretary in 1930, and he said, August Sander did paintings, or photographs, I should say, of all workers, laborers.
Oh, wow.
Richard Avedon did a series on the Western series, the cowboy Western series. You know, when you go to a show, there is a theme that runs through that. So, you know, looking back on that, I wanted him to say something more positive about the work, and he actually said the work was really good. But now that's going to give me an opportunity to take each one of these series and really run with it.
Yeah. I have two questions in regards to collaboration. Have you ever done like a collaboration?
I haven't, but I spent a lot of time talking about art and about my art with it. Well, now, you know, that's an interesting thing. When I went to San Miguel to paint, I would tell people I'm there to paint, and they said, "Well, who are you painting with?" And I said, "I'm just me. I'm just painting." So then I started thinking, you know, I need to have a mentor, you know, a coach. Even the pros have coaches, you know. So I reached out to someone I had taken a class for before. Actually, she was in Palm Springs, California. And I said, would you be interested in, you know, and I'm in Mexico and she's in Palm Springs. Oh, wow. And so she said, sure, that would be really great. And I had 2 1-hour Zoom sessions and we talked about the work, you know. And she said, you know, I usually don't do things with mentors because people ask me all the time because what happens is they come up for the session and they haven't done the work. And she says, you know, and I'm not your mother. You know, you have to do your homework, you know. She says, but you're already doing the work. So it was a very good session, and she saw some things in there. And she asked me why did I like this? She saw some things that I didn't see, you know. She put a name on something that I knew. For instance, I'm trying to incorporate drawing. Mm-hmm. So one of them I came back, you know, at the end I had a really thin brush, a rigger, and drew on it. And then when I did it, it was too strong, too prominent. It became, another artist says, it's too important. When you look, that's all you see. So I started distressing it and essentially knocking it back into the painting. So when I explained that to her, my mentor says, I call that, when you do that, what you're painting is sitting on top of the painting. Mm-hmm. And when you distress it, it recedes into the painting. Mm-hmm. So that's something, and the reason I'm saying that is because that's something I knew, but now I have a name. I can put a name to it, you know. And so those little things they're gems. There's other things that she did and talked about that also. Like some of the painting that I do, it's not anatomically correct. It's expressive. It's like contour drawing. You know, the hands are too big, but it doesn't really matter because it's expressing. And she says, this is the type of drawing where the body parts aren't always, you know, aren't always anatomically correct, but it works. Yeah. You know, so that's another thing. But that's
that's exactly what I was going to say, because I think your work is very expressive, but very, very flowy. So I feel like it could be easily, like, you know, inspiring to anybody, like any demographic, and everybody can take away something
I hope so.
from
Thank
it.
you.
Yeah, it's not like, because a lot of them sometimes are like strict or like they want to convey a certain message.
Yeah.
But yours, like, the more I look, and then like there's like the bench that turns into a leg, like becomes part. You know what I mean?
Right.
And it's like, you do like a double take, and when you're like ready to, like, either you see in person or, you know, swipe up on Instagram, you're like, wait a minute, was that a foot? What was that? You know what I mean? But that's why I think it's so fascinating.
I'm glad you brought that up. You know, I talk about the expressive body language, and it's emotive, and somebody can really understand it. So essentially, what I want to do is I'd like the viewer to look at the subject and say, you know, I know what that person's feeling, or I've been there before, or even ask, you know, what are they thinking? I wonder what they're thinking. You know, when you look at the two brothers, what are they thinking? So my goal is for the viewer to have an emotional experience when they look at the painting. You know, to question, wow, that's interesting, and why is it interesting, and what's going on there? You know, is there a narrative? You know, these things are really, I think, a narrative. Everybody's really interested in the story behind it. And I think the body language of the people, there's an implied narrative that you can create your own story of what's happening or what's going on with these people, you know.
Absolutely. That's actually going to be my next question. When you create your work, are you thinking of like the perspective of the person that's seeing the work and what like emotion and message you're trying to convey, or does it kind of like just flow spontaneously and it works out in the end and you're like, oh my god, this is exactly what I wanted and I got it?
That's a very interesting question. You know, the brothers painting, I've done a color study, I've done a drawing, and I've also done the finish with the painting. So there's a couple of questions, a couple of answers. One is I don't intentionally try to convey a feeling. I see the subject. They look really interesting to me. Captivating, I should say, is more. And I start drawing it. And when I draw it, it becomes something else. I think the art takes life and becomes something that it was more. And sometimes I'm astounded. Like, how did I do that? I just drew it, and it came out.
Happened, yeah.
And then when my color studies, I did the drawing. I had the younger brother. And he looked really angry when I did and I said, where did that come from? Because he wasn't. And then I said, I got to erase it. And I said, maybe this is the way the art wants it to be. Maybe I just let it go. And that's one of the things I think I've learned through this. I'm just let it go. So I don't intend to create an emotion. There's something about the subject that's captivating for me. And when I draw it, it comes out in a way that I never really expected it to be, and that is really stimulating. It really is really engaging when I look at that. So,
do you like seeing how people interact with your work and like hearing their feedback, or you just kind of like to observe from afar?
It's really gratifying when people say that it's really great. I have this one particular painting of this 1910 photograph of this artist, of this a worker. And he's got a pompadour, and his collar is put up. He's like really cool, and he's not looking at the camera at all. He's like disgusted, And I don't know. Some people said, "Wow, he looks really cool." This is like a 110-year-old photograph, So no, I enjoy that. But sometimes I see people. Actually, a man looked at the two brothers. And he looked at it very intently, quietly, for a long time. Put his hand to his mouth, and I don't know. I just think he may have been an artist. I just that's a feeling I get sometimes when I look at a painting. I stare at it. So, yeah. And people, I like to talk, so if people want to come and ask me questions.
That's amazing.
I have no problem with that.
And do you like constructive criticism? Some people say like a bad review. Some people say constructive criticism.
Well, I haven't had too many criticisms. I hope that I have thicker skins, than that. But I try to come back and think, what are they saying? Paul Lasser said, you need. There's nothing I can write here. I said, what about all this work? He says, yeah, but you need to have this. This is really great work, but you need to have consistent body. And, I wasn't too happy about that, but he told me the truth. He told me what I needed to hear, and that actually gave me impetus to work on these different themes, and identify something I hadn't seen before. So, I think you have to be constructive and pick out pick the best and leave the rest.
And how do you plan your series? Because you mentioned the swimmer series, the current series you're doing. Does it just come naturally to you, or like while you're working on one series, you're kind of like?
I have a group of photographs that I'm working with, and I've done maybe 3 or 4 paintings of the swimmers, and then I say, I got to move on to something else. So now I'm doing the dancers. I had this large one that I just finished of the dancers. I did the drawing and I got stuck. So I put it aside, and I did this other one, the ska dancers. I did this other one of this couple, and it was very expressive that I did in San Miguel. So I thought, if I work on this one, maybe it'll inform me how to do the other one. And I really like the way that the new one came out. So that kind of gave me, I don't know, a confidence, a way of knowing how to work with this other one. And the drawing came out really much better in the way that I wanted to. The painting came out much better in the way I wanted to do it. So there's just, and so far I have a lot of ideas. Hopefully we'll find out when I run out.
And when you're stuck, as you mentioned, you were stuck in a painting, do you continue like a new painting, or are you open to like hearing other people's ideas or?
I don't, everybody here in the residency has been really good, and they come and they take a look, but everyone is pretty much working on their own. So I have a friend who's a very good artist, and she prefers to come after the day is done and look at the work at that point. I just, I'm not stuck that often, but sometimes I'm concerned about making a mark that it might ruin it, but then I say, that's what I'm here for, you know. And what's really interesting is that sometimes when I do something that I don't think may not work, something else comes out of it, you know. I think this is one video that I listened to, and the artist said you gotta fail, and if you fail, then you're doing something right.
Yeah.
I mean, David Bowie said, it's like swimming, and if you're in water where you're not over your head, that isn't where you need to be. You need to be in where you're over your head,
Absolutely.
And so those are just the things that I just keep on doing, and I try. And the SCAF has really given me the opportunity to try different things. That's really been the great one of the great things here.
Absolutely. And how long does the residency last for?
It's 3 months.
3 months.
And boy, I tell you, it goes by really fast.
And you guys started in April?
Yeah, April 3rd. It was the first Monday.
Okay.
And then we're done. Tomorrow, the 23rd of June, is the closing reception, and then we're out of here on the 28th.
Oh wow. Okay.
So we clean the studios and get everything out.
Besides the show you're working on in Mexico City, are you planning on anything else? Or
well, I've applied to another residency.
Okay.
And I'm the curator in Mexico City would like to have 40 paintings. I have 15, so I have a little bit of work to do.
Yeah.
And he also said if that doesn't work, I can go to Oaxaca.
Oh, wow.
That's going to be one of the things I'm going to be working on. I also am going to take a painting workshop with Marcus Lupertz, who is one of the best well-known living German artists right now. I took a painting course with him last year.
Oh, wow.
He has work. He had a one-person show at the Museum of Fine Art in Munich. He has work in the Met, in the Modern Art Museum. He's an older gentleman. So I'm going to be taking a painting course with him in July.
That's amazing. So
that's really good. And it's kind of up in the air, but someone contacted me that they're going to have an alumni show at Kane University. That's where I went. Wow. She's interested in. I think it's going to be in November, December. So she's interested in having a couple of pieces in there also.
Yeah.
So
we'll be sharing your Instagram later in the episode, so people can follow you and check in on that. But I wanted to ask the $1 million question.
Yeah.
That I enjoy asking all the artists.
Yeah.
From a business, artistic business perspective, what's an advice that you would tell your younger self?
Well, I think first off it always comes back to do the work. You have to do the work. You have to have a lot of paintings before you finally you start getting something. I think networking is really important. One of the best things about being here on the East Coast, and I tell you that I lived in New Jersey for 35 years, and then I moved to California, and now I'm back here, is that you go in and see the art all the time, and you can go in during the openings and start seeing people who and galleries that work that you like. And these you can also see artists. The artists that have the show are very approachable. You can go up and say, I really like your work. Can I have a selfie with you? And you can talk to them and ask them for advice. There's no place like New York in the world. New York, Chelsea alone has 300 galleries. There's 600 galleries in the city of New York. No place is like that, and you can go in and see them. There's openings every Thursday, I think it is. And so this is a great opportunity to do that, really get immersed in art. I think one person is, how do you know if you're an artist? It's like, how do you know if you like to breathe? You don't think about that, it's something you have to do. And then she said, that only means you're an artist. That doesn't mean you're a good artist. That's a whole other thing. But, so I think it's do the work and then network, and meet other artist friends. When things don't go well, you just have to keep on working.
And adapt, yeah. How do you, 2 questions. How do you see the Jersey City art market, compared to what it was and what it is now, and what do you hope for the future here?
Well, I can't really say I know a lot about the Jersey art. I was in Westfield, and I worked in the city, and I taught in Springfield, and I would come to Jersey City for the openings and all. I think the art scene is very vibrant. You know, there's a lot of galleries. There's a 150 Bay is a great collection of studios there. Where else does that exist? You know, I went in Hoboken. There was a artist studio tour, and there was a leather factory on Observer. And I went to the 5th floor, and there were all sorts of artists there. You know, it was really just amazing. And one of the artists was in 2011 was in the first SCAF program, and they didn't have a lot of artists at that time, so they kept on asking her to stay, so she was there for 10 months in that program. And then she said when she was there, she would meet people in the elevator and say, "Hi, I'm an artist, where are you?" And she met a lot of people, and she did pick up a gallery. After 10 months, somebody came and saw her work. So I think you have to be out there. You have to kind of start talking. People are hesitant on that, you know, but you just, and then one of the professional developments here said it's 9 touches. You have to connect with somebody 9 times before you can really start making a connection. That's
absolutely true. Yeah, I always heard that. We have the same expression, Brazil.
Right. So, you know, I think, you know, make art, take courses, go and see what's going on in there, and start looking for galleries that you think that are yours, and make some connections, you know.
And when it comes to like art and business, when you have to do the business aspect of the art world, are you able to do both in one day, or do you have to do like business day one day? And
I think I'm pretty much doing art most of the time, and then I think about business when I come home. You know, it's like homework or something along those lines. You know, like for instance, one of the things I did is I spent. Well, this is the opposite of what I just said. Yesterday, I was at the apartment till about 1 o'clock. Sending out emails, to everyone that had that I knew, and also people had emails. Other people were did messages. I couldn't find other people were on Facebook Messenger. Some people were in Instagram. So I think part of that is making a list, a client list. And managing it. So one of the things I realized is, God, I've got people all over the place here. How do I make this more, cohesive? One of the things that they said was, in professional development, is send out a notice once a month. Hi, how you doing? I just want to let you know what's going on. And I really felt pressure. That's where I felt pressure to really sit down and send these emails out. And I couldn't do it on Monday. On Tuesday, I just I had to, so that's part of. But then I just went to the studio later that day, and I worked really late that night. So,
all right, would you mind sharing with us your Instagram and your website, please?
Sure. My Instagram is Leonard_Gabriel_art. That I have one that's an artist page. The other one is photography. Okay. It's mainly, that's mainly travel photography. When I go to the museums and stuff, I give you that one. It's Leonard_Gabriel_photography. And then my website is leonardgabriel.com.
Perfect. So everybody please follow him. So he has so much events coming up. Hopefully, so when I started this podcast, I wanted to interview the same artist every year and kind of keep track of them and see where they're in their career. So I hope maybe in January, if I'm happen to be in Mexico City and we get the show, we can see each other and then do another part 2. But if not, maybe we'll be in another country or who knows where we'll be, right? So, and another thing I wanted to ask, are you open to commissions? Because there's previous artists that got
yes, sure.
Yeah? So they can just email you or reach out on Instagram,
right.
That's okay?
Yeah, it's leonardgabriel.art@gmail.com.
Gmail. All right, Leonard, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Oh, it was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for your time, and I'm so excited that we got to meet up today.
Hey, I am too. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you for being on my podcast.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Tarik Talk. Follow Tarik Talk on all social media channels and check out the video interviews online.